The gravel crunched beneath her boots as Helena Monroe stepped out of the car. Ahead, the old monastery loomed in silence, half cast in shadow, half surrendered to the mountain mist. A figure appeared in the doorway, tall, still, watching. He didn't raise his voice. "You can still turn back," Ian Whitaker said softly. Helena paused and then walked forward. The heavy wooden door closed behind her. Without a sound, she told herself it was just a job. A 3-week architectural project. A secluded property, high pay, no distractions. That's what the email promised. But nothing about this place or the man who owned it felt ordinary. Helena had taken the offer without hesitation. After everything that had happened, after everything she'd lost, maybe isolation wasn't a punishment. Maybe it was relief. The house was ancient stone, wrapped in fog and stillness. And Ian Whitaker, the client, didn't shake hands or smile. He simply watched her, like he already knew the parts of her she was trying to hide. There was no cell signal, no Wi-Fi, no contact with the outside world. 30 days, he had said. No questions, no exceptions. And she had agreed, because part of her didn't care what happened anymore. This is the story of how she stepped into the unknown and found something no one expected. But at that moment, Helena had no idea what waited behind those walls. Helena Monroe had spent her whole life building things no one believed Ela could. Raised by a single mother who cleaned offices at night and apartments by day, Helena learned early how to observe in silence. She would sit in corners while her mother scrubbed marble floors and imagine new layouts, cleaner lines, better light. She didn't speak much, but her drawings always did. Years later, with a degree in architecture and a portfolio admired by people who never bothered to ask where she came from, Helena had finally earned a seat at the table. But she had also paid a price: long hours, burnout, and the worst part, losing her younger brother to something she never talks about, a silence that swallowed their last conversation and refused to let go. So when the offer came to redesign select interiors of a remote off-grid monastery in the Colorado mountains, she said yes before reading the fine print. The drive took 6 hours, the last 2 on a dirt road swallowed by trees. When she arrived, the air was cold. The building, still, almost expectant. A woman named Grace met her at the gate. She didn't offer a handshake, didn't say much beyond "follow me." Her grey uniform matched the stone walls. Inside, the air was colder, thicker. The main hallway was lined with tall, arched windows, but the light barely made it past the glass. Helena set her bag down in the guest room assigned to her. It was perfectly clean, minimal. A bed, a desk, heavy curtains. She tried her phone. No signal. Checked for Wi-Fi. Nothing. She told herself it was fine. She needed the focus. She needed the silence. At 7 p.m. sharp, Grace knocked and said only, "Dinner is served." Helena walked into the dining hall. The table was set for 2. Ian Whitaker was already seated at the head, sipping something dark from a glass. He didn't smile. "You settled in?" he asked. She nodded. "It's quiet here. It has to be." He said it like a fact, like gravity. And then, "Remember the rules, Ms. Monroe. 30 days, no questions, no contact. You can still leave." Helena looked at him. Something about his calm disturbed her more than rage ever could. But she only said, "I'm not going anywhere." She didn't know it yet, but that was the first lie. For the first few days, Helena convinced herself this was exactly what she needed. No meetings, no buzzing phones, just stone walls, open blueprints, and her own thoughts. She spent hours walking through the corridors with her sketchpad, noting details most architects would miss. The way light spilled unevenly across the floor, how the north-facing windows seemed deliberately narrowed as if to keep something in. The structure had soul and secrets. Ian didn't interfere. He watched, quietly, always at a distance, always dressed in muted tones, shirts with sleeves rolled up, black shoes without sound. He appeared at odd moments, at the library doorway while she studied, or behind her when she examined floor tiles, never startled her, never explained. They barely spoke, but Helena felt his presence in every corner of the building and, slowly, in her own thoughts. She told herself the project mattered, that maybe this place was a metaphor, a broken thing waiting to be redrawn. One evening, after a particularly long session in the archive room, she found a small envelope slid under her door. Inside, a floor plan, hand-annotated, with Ian's clean, controlled handwriting. Redesign this. It was a wing of the monastery she hadn't seen, not on the initial plans, not in person. She searched the entire next day and found no access, no doors, no sign. That night at dinner, she asked. "There's a section here," she said, showing the plan, "but I can't find it." Ian glanced at the paper, then at her. "That part no longer exists." "But it's still in the structure. It must be." "It's not for the plans." Helena frowned. "Then why include it at all?" Ian leaned forward, voice steady, "to see what you'd do when the rules bent." The conversation ended there. He excused himself. Grace cleared the table. Helena returned to her room, unsettled. She pulled out the floor plan again and stared at the shaded portion, a blank rectangle with no doors marked, no windows. Just space. The next morning, she tried calling out through the front gate's intercom. Static. She tried opening the gate manually. Locked. She tried the landline near the foyer. Dead tone. What had seemed like peace now felt like a trap. She confronted Grace, asking if someone could drive her to the nearest town. Grace only said, "The car's not available right now." "Then when will it be?" But Grace simply looked away, lips pressed, and walked off down the hall. That night, Helena didn't sleep. She sat in the window seat of her room, knees drawn to her chest, watching fog roll across the courtyard like smoke. She had taken this job to escape the noise of the world, to rebuild something beautiful. But now the silence was starting to scream, and she still thought maybe she could fix it. Maybe it was just tension. Maybe it was just her. The days began to stretch in strange ways. Time in the monastery didn't move forward. It circled. Mornings felt like echoes of the ones before. Nights grew longer, darker, heavier. Helena stopped checking her watch. There was no signal, no updates, no outside world, just stone and silence. She tried to lose herself in the project, redrawing beams, refining arches, documenting the structure with obsessive precision. But something in the rhythm had shifted. The air itself felt different, thicker. Watching, Ian became elusive. He skipped dinners, avoided shared spaces. When she did catch glimpses of him in the distance across the courtyard or disappearing through a hallway, he didn't speak. He didn't even look at her. Grace said nothing. She moved through the house like a shadow. One afternoon, Helena followed the sound of voices. It was faint, barely audible. Two people whispering behind a thick door near the chapel wing. She pressed her ear against it, then silence. When she pushed it open, the room was empty. Dust on the floor, undisturbed. She began to wonder if she was imagining things. That night, she tried opening the main doors again. Still locked. She knocked. Nothing. She screamed. No answer. Back in her room, she tore down the plans from her wall, scattering blueprints across the floor. She wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. Only this tightness in her throat that felt like choking on something invisible. She climbed into bed, fully dressed, the lights off, staring at the ceiling. At 3:14 a.m., she heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, precise. Just outside her door, they stopped. She sat up in bed, holding her breath. A shadow passed beneath the door. Then nothing. No knock, no voice, no movement. She stayed frozen for hours, muscles locked, heart thudding against her ribs. When morning came, the hallway was empty again, the dining room untouched. The house felt abandoned, and yet she knew it wasn't. Later that day, she entered the West Wing, a section Ian had once told her was under renovation. But it didn't look under construction. It looked forgotten. Dust-covered chairs, faded rugs, picture frames missing photos. She found a piano against the far wall. One key was broken. She pressed the others softly. A few notes, barely audible. A melody that didn't quite exist. She stood there for a long time. That night, Ian finally reappeared. He was sitting alone in the old library, a single lamp glowing above him, reading something bound in leather. He didn't look up when she entered. She didn't wait to be invited. "You locked the doors," she said. Still no response. "You cut off the outside." He closed the book slowly. "You agreed to the terms." She crossed the room. "Terms don't include losing your mind." He finally looked up. "I warned you, Helena. You warned me it would be quiet. Not that it would swallow me whole." His expression didn't change, but his eyes did. They flickered just for a moment with something that looked like guilt. "I brought you here to restore something," he said. "I never said what. And what is that?" But he stood, walked past her, and whispered as he passed, "The things we lock away are the ones we hear the loudest." And he was gone again. That night, as the wind howled through the cracks in the stone, Helena sat alone in the library. The book he left still open on the table. A note was scribbled in the margin. "What resists the light may not be ready to be saved." She traced the words with her fingers, and for the first time in years she whispered into the dark, "Maybe I'm not either." Have you ever felt trapped in a place or a moment that you chose but couldn't escape? Sometimes it's not the walls around us, but the silence inside that holds us back. If you've been there, or if you're still there, share your story in the comments. You never know. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear tonight. The next morning something had changed. Not in the house. It was still cold, still quiet, still steeped in silence. But in her, Helen awoke with no panic, no fight, just a strange, still focus, like her mind had gone quiet enough to hear something beneath the noise. On the floor beside her bed, someone had left a small item, an antique drafting compass, worn but clean, engraved with the initials IW. No note, no explanation. She held it in her hand for a long time. Later that day, while sketching in the sunroom, Ian appeared without warning. No footsteps, just the quiet presence of him. He didn't speak at first. He simply pulled a chair beside her and sat, close, not touching. She kept sketching. He watched. After a moment he asked, "What are you drawing?" She showed him. A reimagined layout of the central courtyard. Soft paths, more light, less symmetry. "Why change it?" he asked. "Because the current design feels like a cage," she said. He didn't argue, didn't push back. He just nodded once, thoughtfully, and then said, almost too quiet to catch, "It's hard to unbuild what was made to last." They sat in silence for several minutes, and for the first time it didn't feel like avoidance. It felt peaceful. That evening Helena didn't wait for Grace to announce dinner. She went down early. The dining room was dimly lit, the long table set for two again. Ian was already there, pouring wine. She sat across from him. No words, just clinking silverware and candlelight. Halfway through the meal, he said without looking up, "Most people can't stand silence, but you make room for it." Helena met his eyes across the table. "I don't need noise to feel seen." He held her gaze a second longer than usual, and for the first time she didn't want to leave, not because she was trapped, but because something inside her had finally stopped running. Helena started redesigning the central cloister first. She redrew the angles, widened the arches, and added walkways that curved, gentle, human shapes instead of rigid geometry. Ian had originally requested discrete improvements, but she went further, not to challenge him, just because, for the first time, she felt something flow through her again, a sense of purpose, a pulse. She laid out the new design in the library. Ian walked in just as she was adjusting the scale. He studied the layout in silence. "You've changed the symmetry," he said, neutral. "Yes," she replied. "I think it'll breathe better this way." Ian placed both hands on the edge of the table. "You think buildings can breathe? I think people can," she said. "And spaces can help them remember how." He didn't speak right away, but his expression softened. just slightly. "That wing," he said, pointing to the section she hadn't touched. "Leave it as it is." "The blocked wing?" she asked. He nodded. "Some walls are meant to stay closed." Helena didn't push, not yet, but she marked the space with a thin grey line, a boundary, not a surrender. Later, they walked the garden path together. Quiet again. He told her about the monastery's origin, how it was once a refuge for artists who had lost everything, painters, composers, broken people, and how, when he bought it, he wanted the silence to heal him too. "It worked," he said. "Until now." She looked at him. "And now?" His answer was barely a whisper. "Now the silence is full of you." Helena couldn't sleep that night, not because she was afraid, but because something felt too close, too real. She got up and walked the hallway barefoot. The air was cool, the moonlight cutting through the windows in slanted beams. When she reached the blocked wing, the door was ajar. Her heart quickened. She pushed it open. Inside, darkness, dust, and something more. Papers scattered on a long oak table, architectural plans, dozens of them, all signed by other architects, all stamped with dates from years ago, all abandoned. She sifted through them, each one marked "Terminated, Project, Incomplete." Every plan had notes in Ian's handwriting, every project unfinished. A cold realization crept in. Was she just another in a long line, another vision brought in, then pushed away? Back in her room, she stared at the ceiling, questions racing. Was Ian opening up because he trusted her, or was this just part of the pattern? She remembered his words. Some walls are meant to stay closed, and now she wondered, was she rebuilding something, or just decorating a prison? The next morning, Helena didn't go to the library, or the drawing room, or the courtyard. She went back to the locked wing. This time she didn't knock. She walked in like she belonged there. Ian was already inside, standing at the far window, watching the trees sway beyond the wall. A fire burned low in the corner fireplace. Papers were still spread across the table, untouched. He didn't turn around. "You went through them," he said. "I did." "And now you want to leave?" "No," she said firmly, "but I want to understand." Ian turned slowly. His face was unreadable. "You brought them here," Helena said, stepping closer. "All of them, talented people, each with a voice. Each asked to fix something, but none of them stayed." "They didn't leave," he said quietly. She stopped. "What?" "They didn't leave," he repeated. "I ended every project before it began." "Why?" Ian's gaze dropped. He took a slow breath. "Because I can't handle what happens when they get too close." Helena shook her head. "Too close to what? The house? Or you?" He looked up, and there it was, the first crack. "I built this place to keep the world out. But every time someone walks through that gate, I remember what it feels like. To need. To need what?" she asked, almost whispering. "To be seen," he said. He stepped toward her now, more vulnerable than he'd ever allowed himself to be. "When you're silent long enough, people stop asking questions. They assume you're strong. They call it control. But it's not. It's fear." Helena stood still, her eyes locked on his. "I'm not here to save you, Ian. I know. I came here to fix a space. I didn't expect it to tear me open, but now that I'm open, I won't pretend this doesn't matter." He nodded slowly, pain in his expression. "I don't want to lose this, but I don't know how to keep it without hurting it." "Then let me choose," she said. "Stop locking doors for me." He hesitated, then stepped aside. With one hand, he pulled a cord from the wall. The heavy drapes behind him groaned open. A massive arched window filled with light, the kind of light the room hadn't seen in decades. The warmth hit her skin like a memory. Helena stepped forward slowly until they stood shoulder to shoulder. No words, just light, and the faint sound of the wind carrying something away. She turned to him. "You built this place to protect yourself," she said, "and you came here to disappear." He nodded. "But I see you." His eyes filled, not with tears, but with the unbearable weight of recognition. She reached for his hand. He took it. No walls, no silence, no contracts, Just the quiet agreement between two people finally brave enough to let each other in. Helena didn't stay forever. She finished the project, rebuilt the courtyard, redesigned the north wing to let the morning sun in, left the west wing untouched. Not because she couldn't fix it, but because some stories are meant to remain carved in silence. Ian never asked her to stay, and she never asked him to follow. But before she left, she handed him a set of keys. Simple, heavy, clean. "To the windows," she said. He smiled, just slightly. In the months that followed, the house changed, in quiet, almost imperceptible ways. Curtains stayed open, meals were served in the garden, new rooms were unlocked. And Ian, he didn't vanish. He started answering letters, returning calls, slowly letting sound back into his life. Helena, back in the city, opened a small studio. Not big, not flashy. Just a place where people came to rebuild spaces that didn't quite fit who they'd become. She never told clients what to do, she just listened. Because now she understood something she never had before. We don't always need someone to fix the cracks. Sometimes we just need someone to stand there and not look away. Maybe you've met someone like that too. Someone who kept every door closed, not out of cruelty but out of fear. Someone who didn't know how to ask for help, but needed it more than anyone. Or maybe you were that person. If this story reminded you of something or someone, share it in the comments, because sometimes your story might be the key that unlocks someone else's silence. And if you believe that even the quietest hearts can find connection, that healing doesn't come with noise but with presence, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. We still have so many stories to tell, stories about second chances, soft awakenings, and the kind of love that doesn't force its way in, but waits right outside the door.